So right here behind me, this started at noon. It's part of the National Day of Action, and it's one of the Stop the Bans rallies that are happening all across the country here. So this was put on by the National Association for the Repeal of Abortion Laws, along with the Northwest chapter of Planned Parenthood. Both groups are here today, and several speakers, both state and local representatives, are speaking to stand in solidarity with several of those states who have passed abortion laws, most notably over in Alabama last week. Now, this is sending a message essentially saying that women should have the rights to their bodies, the rights to choose. Several of the speakers today will be speaking about also talking about what the laws here in Washington are. So it began just a few moments ago. It's set to last until 1 o'clock today. We're going to tune in and listen to what they have to say, and then coming up tonight, we'll have full coverage of what happened here at this Stop the Ban rally. For now, live in Seattle, Callie Greenberg, King 5 News.